everybody, welcome back. We're going to do two of our front covers today. One is going to be the thread velvet, so that is an embroidery, and we're going to put some decorative stitching around the outside. And then our second pillow topper is going to be all about some fun decorative stitches. So these are the two we're going to do this week. So that'll be a lot of fun and a great way to get started with our making those fronts. So let's start with the thread velvet. Thread velvet is a really interesting embroidery technique, and HUSQVARNA Viking has been doing this for a little while. But the thing is with thread velvet, if you look at this design, you'll see right in here, it's kind of, you just want to feel it, because what we do is we do lots of stitching and then we cut the stitches. So you're going to see that here in a minute. But then you're going to cut the stitches, and with that, it just blooms. It's like you have just a velvet flower. It's so beautiful. So I'm excited to show you how that's done. First, you do want to choose your thread velvet design, and we chose a design that was from the My Sewnet library. What we're going to do, I want to show you a couple different ways you can get to thread velvet designs. So, and they're actually on the machine. So we have some that are right within the Epic 3. So let's go ahead and we're going to come over to the screen and go into embroidery. And the cool thing about embroidery with our HUSQVARNA Viking Designer Epic 3 is here are all the designs. And I love to look at all the designs. It's so cool. I just will look through and see many different things. But the trick is all of these designs, I don't know what is a thread velvet design. So what I'll do is I'll go back to the Joy of Sewing Advisor, choose embroidery. And then once I've chosen embroidery, I'm just going to slide over until I see surfaced embroidery. And under surfaced embroidery, that's where all my thread velvet will be. So I'm just going to touch that, and I get this great window that comes up, and this actually gives me all the instructions on how to do thread velvet. But this is what I like probably the best, is when I touch content, all of these designs, these are thread velvet designs that I actually have in the Epic 3. So these are already in there, and I can just go to that thread velvet and choose one of the thread velvet designs. So super easy, super fast. And another thing that's really great is because the Designer Epic 3 is Wi-Fi capable, I can actually look right in my Sewnet. So I can come up here and search for my designs, and I can type in thread velvet, and you'll see it right here. So that's in my search. And then thread velvet designs are going to be right here, right on the screen from the My Sewnet library. So it's super easy to do that. And again, I can look at those right there. Now, one other thing, I've already chosen my design, so I don't have to search all the way through all of these different designs. So it's actually on my USB stick. So I'm just going to jump right over here and go to my USB stick, and here's my design. So I just touch that, and it comes right in on screen, and it comes in the proper hoop size, the 120 by 120 hoop. Now, here's one thing. If you don't have a subscription for My Sewnet, for the software, or for the library, you can actually purchase this design just on its own. You don't have to have a subscription. You can purchase designs one at a time. So again, so many different ways to get that embroidery design. Once you have it up, we're going to go ahead and then stitch it out. Now, once you have your design, you know what hoop you're going to be using. So we're going to use the 120 by 120 hoop to work with. And with the 120 by 120 hoop, everyone, I want to make sure that you realize, I'm very adamant about this, to get a nice hooping for your, basically for your pillow top or your pillow front, you want to make sure you hoop properly. Hooping is a physical activity, everyone. You really need to stand to hoop to make sure you get a nice hooping. Also, you want to hoop on a nice hard flat surface. The thing with a lot of people, and I do it too because I'm like, oh, I'm in a hurry or I need to do something. You often will like hoop on your lap or on the ironing board. Neither of those usually are hard, flat surfaces. So you want to clear out a space, make sure you have a nice hard, flat surface. Okay, so that's really important. When we're ready to hoop, I'm just going to undo the hoop, and I have basically an outer hoop and an inner hoop. And many of you already are great with embroidery, so that's wonderful. If you're new to embroidery, what I want you to do is, again, the outer hoop, inner hoop, we're going to use both pieces. And I'm going to go ahead and use a piece of tearaway stabilizer. So I've got a piece of tearaway stabilizer here. And we went ahead. The fabric we're using for our toppers is just such a beautiful fabric from Classic Sewing here. I went ahead and we used another piece of, it's basically like an interfacing behind this fabric to make it have enough support along with the stabilizer to get a beautiful design, especially with the thread velvet. So once I have this set, I am going to slide this forward because I'm going to try and be a do as I do, not do as I say and not what I do, right? So I want to make sure we're going to align with this hoop. You're going to see there are some little markings here. And I want to make sure that those are in the right spot. And kind of in front, I'm going to ask you guys to give me just a little bit of slack here as we're going forward, because here we go. Let's go ahead and pull that forward, and we're going to get really close. So go ahead and open that up. I think I forgot. That's all nice and open. I may need to unscrew this just a little bit more to make sure I get this working right. And let's see if I can get this straight. Well, we're close. We're going to let this be today, right? But I want to make sure that you guys align. So I'm going to pull this back in here. See how this isn't quite aligned here? What I would do is I would unhoop, just let this come out just a little bit, and then turn it just that little bit and make sure that I align that. So you want to take the time and effort to make sure you've got that aligned properly, and then you're ready to go. So I'm going to let this be for just a moment. And now what we're going to do, we're going to set up our machine. And I want to make sure, remember at the beginning, we talked about, using a proper bobbin thread. So you want to use embroidery bobbin thread. It's a little bit lighter weight. And I will make sure that that gets in my tension, so I won't have any tension problems as I start sewing. So go ahead and do that. And then I'm going to take off my presser foot to put on my embroidery presser foot. I don't know how many of you have actually worked with this great little tool that comes in your HUSQVARNA Viking machine, but I'm going to go ahead and use that to unscrew the screw for my ankle. But here's the other thing. I wasn't quite patient enough, because what I want to share with you is, see that? That's magnetic. So that holds that screw in there. So it makes it easy to work with. So you're not like going, oh my gosh, I got to have 12 hands. Nope, this little tool works just perfect for you. And now that I'm ready to put on, now make sure you take off your IDF. So you want to make sure that's disengaged. When I put my presser foot ankle on, so my embroidery presser foot ankle, you got to make sure that this little piece right here goes above your needle bar. So I'm going to put that above my needle bar. But here's the tip of the day here is to bring your needle and turn that needle down into the hole of the foot. And that makes it easier because this little guide, your needle's down, so you don't have to worry about struggling to get that to come on. So now let's go ahead and screw that back in. Make sure that that's tight, and then just bring my needle up. So easy way, make sure you put that needle down to get that presser foot in there. So super, super easy that way. All right. So what I'm going to say, you can smile about this. through the magic of video, what we're going to do is, let's say I've got my embroidery done. Okay, so let's say I've got my embroidery done. I'm just going to move this to the side. What we're now going to do is this little piece here. This is one of the designs from inside the machine. And I wanted to show you exactly how the thread velvet works. Basically, what happens with thread velvet is, you'll see how there's blue on top of this and then there's pink here. I just neglected. I didn't actually sew the blue over the top, because what I want you to see, this is what it looks like before we do our last little bit of stitching. And now you sew on top, then you have your blue on top. You're going to take, now this is really, you got to be careful, guys. This is truly a scalpel, so be very careful with this. Don't let your kids, grandkids, anybody be around this, because it is super sharp. And what we're going to do is we're going to cut. And I know my head's probably in the way, but I want to make sure I'm not cutting the lines of stitching. I'm only cutting, look at that. Isn't that cool? I'm only cutting the satin stitching. So you want to take some time and effort, but just very carefully. You don't want to go too far, because if you go too far, then it cuts through your fabric. But I love this. Isn't that just the funnest thing? And then you just kind of, you go like that, and you have this beautiful velvet looking piece like we have on the front. Isn't that just so wonderful? Now, there is a little tip that I want to give you, is on the back, you want to make sure that you do use a little thread or fabric sealant, just in case, not only just in case you nip through, but you don't want anything to pull out, right? So use a little bit of sealant behind, and then you just kind of, again, come back in and use that scalpel to do your cutting. So that is what's going to make the thread velvet, and that's what makes it beautiful. So we're going to go ahead and finish out this topper with using a 7-hole cord foot. So I'm just going to get that all ready to go, and then we'll come back and do the 7-hole cord. So once you've finished your embroidery, that beautiful thread velvet in the middle, we're actually going to go ahead and do some decorative stitching along the outside edge here. And this is done with a specialty foot. It's called a 7-hole or 7/9-hole cord foot. You can put a bunch of different cords in it. And we're using just a decorative stitch. And the thing about the cord foot is you want to show the cords. So the stitch we're going to choose actually is a stitch that isn't very satiny. It's got a lot of extra space in the middle. So we're going to do two things. We're going to get our foot set up, and then we're going to choose the stitch. So to set up the foot, this is what the foot actually looks like, right? So it's got all these different holes in it. And with that, you can see there's a bunch of different holes there. And we're going to have the cord actually go through those holes. And so when you get finished, I have a couple of them here. When you get finished, this is what it's going to look like. As you're going to see, I've got all those different cords going through there. And the beauty of this foot is it actually holds the cords in place, so you don't have to worry about them getting all mixed up. Now, I do want to share with you how to put those cords in. And I know some of you recognize this. This is one of those, I say, old-time needle threaders, right? Well, this is fabulous for working with this foot, because what we're going to do is I'm just going to put that through one of the holes there, and then you actually put your cord through that wire. So that needle threader portion, get that done there, like that. And then it just pulls it through. Look at how easy that was, right? So it just pulls it through. So you got that in the first hole, and then you're just going to continue to add the number of cords that you need. And like I said, for this time, what I did is I actually used, I'm going to bring this back here. I used 3 of the holes in the back and then 2 in front. So I actually have 5 different cords going through here. One other little tip that's really important, once you get those cords through, it is kind of important. I'm going to make a little overhand knot. Can you see that? I've got this little knot that's behind the foot. and that way it's going to hold my cords in place. And the other little piece to the puzzle is make sure all the cords are going up over the top of the foot. See how they're coming out the top. So that's really important, all right? So I'm just going to set that aside. And remember, we were doing embroidery, so we do want to take off, if I can get that on there, take off the embroidery foot. So using my great little multi-tool screwdriver there, I did put my needle down just a little bit to make it easier to take off the presser foot. And I do that. It's always, there we go. And then bring my needle up. Remember, there's my presser foot ankle. So I'm just going to slide that back in and just get this started again. And go ahead and use my multi-tool here. So go ahead and screw that in. All right, so now we're ready to go. Snap off the one foot, and this time, again, we've got this cording foot. I want to make sure that, again, that knot is in the back. Go ahead and slide this on. So knot is in the back, slide that on. So we're all set up and ready to go. Again, this foot does not have a place for the IDF, so make sure that you do not have that engaged. And now we're going to go ahead and I'm just going to choose my stitch. So remember, we were in embroidery. Let's go ahead and get back into sewing and sewing here. And then we'll come in, and again, so many stitches to choose from. We chose in the C category, C3, and some of these are so much fun, but remember what we're doing this time is we want the decorative thread to actually show. So we're going to choose stitch number 6, and you can see what a fun stitch this is. You want to make sure, depending upon the presser foot that you have, I'm going to take my stitch width down to 7 because the presser foot I have is a 7mm stitch, so, or 7mm presser foot. So make that quick little change and we're ready to start. We're going to come back and we're going to actually use, your embroidery's finished in the center of this, and we've marked our lines that we're going to stitch on, okay? So we've got our lines marked here, we've got our embroidery in the center, and then what we're going to do is we're going to sew one line, 2 lines, sew the opposite ones, and then we're going to turn and then we're going to sew the other 2, okay? So today I'm only going to sew 1 line just so you kind of see how it works, but make sure you sew the 2 opposite and then come back over the top because that'll make it look nice and even when you're working with your top. All right, so now let's come back over here. One other thing, sorry, I don't want to forget. We went ahead and in the instructions, we told you to go ahead and put, a nice little piece of interfacing or a nice extra piece of stabilizer that irons on to our beautiful fabric. But I still believe that I'm going to use, I always use a tearaway when I do decorative stitching. I think it gives more stability to my stitches. So I still have a piece of tearaway, a lighter weight tearaway stabilizer underneath. All right. So I'm going to come in, start right at that edge, and just going to tap that foot control. You guys know already I love the tap. Here's one thing. Make sure that you do not start sewing. See, there's my little knot. It's on the back here. I don't want to start sewing on the knot. Otherwise, it doesn't necessarily sew well. So I'm just going to start. And the beauty of this particular stitch, so the fun thing about this particular stitch is it's holding down my cords. You can kind of see, giving myself a little more speed. You can see how pretty that is coming out the back. Depending upon what color you choose, you can have a contrasting color, whatever it may be. And one other little tip, look at that. See how pretty that is right back there. One other little tip. is you certainly can use your start-stop button rather than your foot control. I was using my foot control. So I'm now going to use start-stop and just finish out. I'd like to hold, you can see I'm holding this up, don't have to worry too much about, it getting caught in there. That's what the foot's for. But notice I am holding this up just to make sure everything is feeding evenly. And again, depending upon what you are, what your color scheme is, what you're deciding to do, I use like a pink over the blue cord, but you could use, whatever you like, whatever you feel is going to be pretty. So I'm almost at the end. I want to go ahead and go through this whole piece here, get it all the way to the edge, because once you get done, it is super easy. That just comes right out. And look at how pretty that stitching is. I just love the way that this looks. It is just a really pretty way. You can use, I use pearl crown rayon for this, so it is a nice pearl crown rayon. However, you can use flatter cords, you can use yarns, you can use all sorts of different things. The one tip I will give you is with this foot. So with this foot, you want to make sure when you put the yarn in the foot that it moves freely. Like you can pull it from front and back. You want to make sure it moves freely. Otherwise, if you have too thick a yarn or too thick a cord, what'll happen is the cord will get caught and then your machine will stop stitching. So again, make sure that it moves freely in there. And once you're done with that one, remember, you're just going to go ahead. You're going to do all four sides. You're going to do one side and then the next two. And you're basically done with this pillow topper. So we're ready to move on to our decorative stitch pillow topper, or pillow front. So that's going to be our second one that we're going to do for this session. So get ready. We're going to do some fun decorative stitching. So the next pillow front we're going to do is one with all sorts of decorative stitches. We're going to do some pop-up and applique stitches. We're going to do some embellished stitches that you can add little crystals to if you want. Candle wicking, which I just love candle wicking. I think it's just beautiful. And even put on some sequins. So we're going to do several different lines of these. And let's just get started. The pop-up stitches is what we're going to start with. So we actually chose one of the stitches that's a pop-up and applique. So that's what this beautiful centerpiece is. I'm just going to slide that out. So to get to the applique and pop-up stitches, we're going to go ahead and just get back to the Joy of Sewing Advisor and touch sewing. And with the Joy of Sewing Advisor, we have the ability with these exclusive stitch techniques. And you'll see we've got a lot of different ones, but here is the applique and pop-up stitches. So I'm going to go ahead and choose that. We do want to go ahead and clear what we were doing because this is a new stitch. And the cool thing, just like we talked about in when we worked with the thread velvet, we've got this great little pop-up that shows me instructions on how to use the applique stitches. And so step by step, if you forget, if you've done these before and you don't remember exactly how to do it, there's a great little video at the end, or if you're new to working with the pop-up and applique stitches, use this video to walk you through step by step. Now, the other thing that's great about this is we do have the content tab that shows me these are the applique and pop-up stitches. They're right there, super easy. We're going to choose stitch number 2. So with stitch number 2, once we have that on the screen, I'm going to use the minimize. The reason why I like to do that is that takes the project, it makes it down, but you'll look, there's a little icon at the very top, and that little icon, when you touch it, it's going to bring back up your information. So again, super easy if you forget or it's like, what do I do next? Here's all the instructions and it's right there on your screen, which is really wonderful. The other thing that you want to look at is it does tell me to put on the S presser foot, and that is one of the presser feet that come with your Designer Epic 3s. So you want to get in your accessories and take out that S presser foot. Now that we've got our stitch, we're now ready to change to a different presser foot. And on the screen, it actually tells me what presser foot to use, the S presser foot. So I'm going to go ahead and use the S presser foot. This is one of the feet that comes with your Designer Epic 3. So that is really important that you realize that. So you want to find this out of your little accessory tray. We're going to go ahead and just slide this on. And I'm going to keep with the decorative thread on top and the decorative or embroidery bobbin thread in there. So that's a great thing to use for our decorative stitches. So we're just going to keep with that. Now, when I'm getting ready to stitch, one of the things that you can certainly do is, here I've got this all gridded out. So you can measure, you can know exactly what distance you need. We've got all of that in the instructions for you. So this way you're all ready to go. You know exactly where you're going to stitch. And we're going to start with the pop-up applique stitch in the middle. Okay, so that's where we're going to start. But there's something else I want to show you that I think is really wonderful. And I have just really grown to love this on my Epic 3. It is projection. I'm going to go ahead and turn on my projection. So when I turn that on, I hope you can see that. Look at that. I've got a grid. I've got a stitch guideline. That's a little red piece here. And then it actually showed me a picture of the stitch. Now here's the thing with the pop-up stitches. This is wonderful because now I know exactly where to start. Here's my mark to start. I'm just going to put that right at the back where my grid line is. So right there at that grid line. And then I'm going to put the presser foot down. That's how I'm going to start with this. But here's the thing for me. I'm actually going to take the stitch preview, and now that I've already set, I'm going to go ahead and turn that stitch preview off because I think it gets a little confusing because we're going to be turning and moving and doing different things like that. So I'm set. I know where this is going to be. One of the other things when you're doing, and it will tell you this in the instructions, if you go ahead and read the instructions, make sure you use your needle up down. So make sure that is on. It's good to use your start stop button. The reason is the machine's going to actually stop. This is one of our exclusive stitches. And what makes this exclusive is the stops in the stitch. So you're going to see that here in just a minute. So I think we're ready to go. I've got my decorative thread. I've got my bobbin thread. I've got everything aligned, and I've got my grid on. So let's go ahead. I'm going to press the start stop button. I'm going to slow it down just a little bit so you can see this. Look at that grid. It makes it perfect so I can see exactly that I'm lined up. Once I have this set, I'm going to turn this. See how I'm turning that? I'm turning it counterclockwise. Counterclockwise. So I'm turning around this way. Actually, that's counterclockwise. I'm going to turn this clockwise. I better do that right. And then I'm going to take a little piece of square fabric. And I'm going to see how I just folded that. I just folded that right into a little bit smaller square. All right. Then I'm going to place this. It might be easier for you to see. I'm going to place it up to the needle on the side. So I just placed it to the side. All right. Now check this out. Just took a couple stitches. Those couple stitches held my little piece of fabric. I'm going to turn it back around here and start again. So now we're stitching this down even more. And we're now ready to do the applique. So that was the pop-up. The applique, we're just going to take our little piece of fabric. I know that was hard to see. I probably put that right. I'm taking this little piece of fabric, putting it right up to the needle. And actually, I even like to put it up so it's like kind of pushing at the needle. And now my Epic 3 is going to go backwards, and it's making the little applique. going to come straight down. We've got another applique to go. So I'm just going to bring this again right up underneath, way to that tip. So all the way as far as I can go, and go ahead and sew. So this is my second applique. So this is my second applique. All right. And for good measure, we're going to do one more, because actually I love this. I get addicted to doing these sorts of stitches. So I'm going to fold this again. So fold like this, turn, and again, so you can see just a little better, bring that right up to the needle. So let that stitch down, bring it back, and here we go. So since we've done this a couple times now, I'm just going to do it fairly quickly. Let's bring that up. And again, get that up close in there. This is our applique. And again, the beauty of the grid, the stitch guide, I know exactly if I'm going straight because everything is lining up with my marked line, which I think is really cool. Bring this one more time. This will be our last one. Now on the last one, so this is going to be my last one, I'm actually going to use my foot control because I'm going to stop this on my own. It would just keep going and going and going, but I'm going to stop this on my own after I get the veins in my leaf. There we go. And once I'm done there, I can use the little tie-off. It's called an immediate tie-off, so I get a nice tie-off stitch. And so this doesn't actually look right now. This doesn't really look like what we had, right? It looks a little different. If you see what this looks like compared to what this is, right? It looks a little different. That's because now we're going to go back in, and this is where I actually like to use these little scissors that I call them over-the-top scissors. I use them a lot in embroidery, but you can also use them just for sewing, and this is great for cutting close with these little applique stitches. So right there. So there you go. So you can see how great. There's your little applique. And now with this guy, you can trim this around. You can make it a little circle. You can make it a rectangle. You can do different things. But you want to see those little guys at the top. So let's get this just a little bit closer in. There we go. And you can even trim this up, make little cuts in it so you can have like a little fluffy flower if you choose. So isn't that fun? Those are those pop-up stitches with the applique. This was our first set, and we're going to get ready and then go on to our next set, which is the embellishment stitches. So I'm going to finish cutting my applique, and then we'll come back and do our next row of stitches. So now that we've got our applique and pop-up stitches done, we're going to do a couple other stitches that are really fun. The first one we're going to work with is the embellishment stitch. And there are several of these on your Designer Epic 3. And reason why they're called embellishment stitches is we have the ability to put in little crystals. There's a specific spot in this stitch that is made to place a crystal. So what we're going to do, we're going to come over to the dimensional stitches category, and it's category number 4. And I'm just going to choose the little flower stitch. So super easy, just go ahead and get that stitch. I do in my projection, remember I turned off, in projection, I turned off the stitch, basically the stitch preview. I want to bring that back on because I love this with my Designer Epic 3 because I can see that stitch. It's just so great. We're going to use, I'm just going to place this around. We're going to use our grid and align that right back here. Now, there is one other little thing that I'm just going to tell you. This is a tip for you guys who have Designer Epic 3s. If you are looking to get one of the things I like to do is go into my grid. And in that grid, I truly am going to make the grid the size of the stitch. So the stitch is showing 10.9. So I'm going to actually make my grid just a little bit wider to 11 millimeters. But check this out. I want you to watch what happens when I scoot the grid. I'm going to actually scoot the grid over just a little bit. So I'm going to move the position. Look what's happening. Can you all see that? I think this is just really cool because I'm going to place the grid on either side of my stitch. So now it's on both sides of the stitch. What that's going to allow me to do is my stitch guide is here. My grid is there. I know exactly where I'm going to be. And now let's just get started sewing. So we're going to go ahead. And now I know exactly how wide that stitch is. So I know exactly where it's going to be as it's moving left and right, because this stitch is wider than 9 millimeters. So it's going to move left and right. I'm using the start stop button. I'm just going to bring my speed up just a little bit. And look at that. See how perfectly aligned, again, with the markings that I have. The projection and the grid allow me to stitch this just perfectly. So it really is a great way to use that projection, and makes it super, actually, super. Again, I'm hands off for most of this because I just look every once in a while. Is it in line? Is it ready to go? And once I get toward the end, toward those last stitching, I went ahead and used the thread cutter, and it's blinking at me, so it's going to actually cut after the last stitch. So see how it slowed down? And now it's going to go ahead and cut. And there's my stitch. Isn't that fun? And isn't that just beautiful? It really is something that's super easy to work with, right? So there's my nice little stitch. And what you can also see is in the middle of those flowers there, can you see that? I think you can see there's a nice little circle. That is where you actually can use the crystals, right? So we just, whatever crystals you choose, you can certainly use those crystals, as well as, you know, there are different tools, different ways to place the crystals, but you're just going to place those along that, in those little circles right in the middle of your flowers. So again, you don't have to place those crystals if you don't have them, but if you do, it certainly, you know, blings up. It makes your little pillow front just really, really nice. Now, what you would do now is go ahead using that same stitch, you would mirror image it and then sew down the other side. Just for time's sake, I'm not going to do that. I think you can do that. Once you get one, then you're going to do the other. So it makes it super simple. But again, mirror imaging makes it look really nice. So it gives it a nice finish on both sides. So now that we've got our embellished stitch done, we're going to go on to candle wicking. And candle wicking, for any of you who have done any hand embroidery, you maybe know that a candle wick is like a little knot. You tie it and you pull it down. It's something that is very dimensional. So I'm going to go in and grab one of the candle wicking stitches on our Designer Epic 3. There is, with those candle wicking stitches, those are actually under the specialty stitch category. And it is candle wick. You can see it right here with the projection. It's really pretty cool that you can see that right there with the projection. Very nice, super distinct stitches. Now with this, I was actually using the S-foot, and it has this groove in the back. So you can see this big groove in the back. With candle wicking, because these are such heavy stitches and they go over themselves so many times, can you see, look at that groove? I think I can, oh, there we go. Now you can see that's a really heavy, super deep groove. So this is what you want to use for candle wicking. It is a specialty foot, so it is an extra foot. You can use the B foot, but sometimes that candlewick stitch is too heavy for the bee foot. So these are specifically made, this particular foot, again, it's called the candlewick foot, specifically made for these stitches. So I'm just going to slip on the candlewick foot here. Just put that behind. Again, knowing with our grid, now with our grid this time, again, remember I had mentioned to you before that I went ahead and I changed the width of the grid, right, to go with my stitch. Well, this time I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to put my grid back to defaults though, because that way, reset, get that right in the middle with that little stitch. So that'll be great. We're going to start with our grid right at the back. So I'm starting right at that point on the grid right there. So I'm starting right at that point right back there. Put my presser foot down. And let's just get started sewing using that start stop button. Now when I'm sewing, the stitch preview automatically goes away. And the reason why it does that, it's not wrong. The reason why it does that is because it is just a preview of where the stitch is going to be. Once you start sewing, it's moving. So because the machine is moving your fabric, that stitch preview is no longer needed. So just don't worry about that. It is there basically for you to set things up, and then it will go away once you get sewing. So don't worry about that stitch preview. Anytime you stop, I'm just going to stop. Anytime you stop, it does come back. So that's what I want you to realize. So that's why sometimes I'll go ahead and turn it off, because sometimes when I'm stopping a lot, it can get distracting. So we're just going to go ahead, continue to finish this. If you decided, you certainly could change colors of thread. You could do all sorts of different things just to make your stitching, make your pillow front look really different. You can use different colors. You can use different pieces to make sure. And look at that. Isn't that pretty? That nice little candlewick right there. That is really nice. So depending upon what you're wanting to show off, again, changing the color, changing a stitch, you guys, if you decide that you didn't like the stitch I chose, that's okay. Change it. It's fun. This is your project, right? But I wanted to show you some different kinds of techniques. So that's why we chose some different stitches like this. Now remember, we're doing the candle wicking on one side. Guess what? You're going to do that on the other side. So again, we're just mirror imaging. So we're moving from side to side. So once I have that candle wick done on both sides, we're ready to do something that's really kind of fun. This is the one that I just get, I think I just would sit in front of a fireplace and just put in sequins. So if you've ever had to sit and put in sequins by hand or put sequins on by hand, I will tell you this is so much easier, and you get beautiful decorative stitching with it. So let's go ahead. We're just going to jump right into our sequin stitches. One of the neat things is, again, just like with our applique and pop-up, this is one of our specialty exclusive stitches for HUSQVARNA Viking. And it's all about it stops in the middle. So let's go ahead and go to the Joy of Sewing Advisor again. And this is going to go into sewing just like we did before. And we are going to choose those exclusive sewing techniques. And here are the sequin stitches. Again, I'm going to say okay, because I want to go ahead and clear what I was doing. But here we go with all of our sequin stitches. I just wanted to show you again, if you have a question or if you aren't sure how to do a sequin stitch, go ahead and play that video. This time I do want to show you a different way of choosing this stitch. And what we're going to do is we're going to go back into our main stitches here. And what you'll find is we've got our dimensional stitches, the whole category. Here's where, again, those pop-up stitches are, those pop-up and applique stitches, but also the sequin stitches. So the neat thing is you can go either through the Joy of Sewing Advisor or through this. We're going to choose stitch number 23. And this is going to be the sequin stitch that we're going to use to finish off our pillow top. Now, one other little thing that I think is really kind of cool, and it's on the screen, so you maybe saw it and didn't understand. On the screen, there's something that actually shows a little question mark on your presser foot. With that question mark, that doesn't mean you don't want to use a foot. What that means is that's a foot that didn't come with your Designer Epic 3. So for the sequin stitch, so we're going to do the sequin stitch next. But for the sequin stitch, what we're going to do is we're going to use the open toe foot. And this is one of my favorite feet. Sometimes instead of the S foot or instead of the B foot, I'll use this foot. It is really easy to see. Can you see that? How that's clear and open. And if I flip it over, you can also see that it has, I turn that the right way, you can see how it has the groove for decorative sewing. So anytime, I think I'm going to grab the B presser foot. So the B presser foot, see how it also has that groove? Anytime a foot has a groove like that, that means it's a decorative sewing foot. So it's ready and it'll move over your move over your decorative stitches really easy. So I think that's important that you realize that. These are not the feet you want to use for sewing straight stitching for garments or quilting because it can pull up the fabrics. So the decorative sewing feet you definitely want to use for decorative stitching. Use your A foot, your regular sewing foot when you're making a garment, when you're doing seams, that sort of thing. So just a little bit of information there for you. So let's go ahead. Let's put on the open toe foot. So I'm going to just slip off my candlewick foot. Go ahead and put on my open toe foot. All right. There is one other tool. Okay, so still have my grid on, so that's great. So I still have my grid on. I'm going to align that in the back, and I'm just going to put my presser foot down. And the important part about the open toe foot is you're going to see I'm going to actually be putting sequins in here. But the other tool that I always love to use when I am working with putting on sequins is a stylus. I know some of you have stilettos. Those will also work, but the thing with the stiletto is it's so sharp that sometimes I see people catching their fabrics. This is one of just a regular little stylus, and what we're going to do is we're going to use the stylus. See these little flat sequins? We're going to use the stylus to place my sequin in the right spot. Oop. And some of you will know this reference, tiddlywinks. That's just almost like tiddlywinks for that. So, all right, we're ready to sew. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to slow myself down a little bit. And I am going to press the start stop here. And when I press the start stop, I'm just going to let my Epic 3 move and actually go until, notice it just stopped. Okay, so it stopped right there. I'm going to take my stylus and I'm going to take my sequin and I'm going to move this right up to the bottom, and then I'm going to go ahead and put my presser foot down. And what I just did is that is now in place. So all I have to do is use my tap of my presser foot or on my foot control, and I just put the needle through the middle of the sequin and I can start stop again. And when my Designer Epic 3, when it stops again, so it will just here in just a moment, I'm going to take my next sequin. All right, so I'm going to take my next sequin. I think there may be a couple sequins with this. Sequins are very, maybe not. They're very, they like to run in packs, I think. So let's get this guy up here. I'm going to move this right into spot, tap my foot, make sure that's in the right place. And sometimes I have to just give it a little nudge. Whoop, that's what I knew. I felt it coming with that. And then down. And I missed. Uh-oh. Well, that's okay. What we'll do is we'll finish this one, and I'm going to do one more for you. That's why practice makes perfect, guys. So let's do this one more time. I'm going to say that that sequin had 2. So let's try this one more time. And we're going to go ahead, place that right in place. There we go. And then up, needle down. Perfect. So you do need to practice a little bit with the sequins. One other little thing that I do want to share with you once we get to this, the next stopping point. What I want to share with you is flat sequins. Notice these are flat. Flat sequins work better and easier than what are called cupped sequins. The cupped sequins, I've got one here, so you can kind of see the difference. So see how that's got kind of cups up? It's the flat sequins are better for this. And that one was right in place, right down. All right, so you're just going to continue. And again, practice this a little bit first before you put this on your front. But once you get it down, you see how easy it is to actually finish this. And I'm just going to do one more for good measure since I missed the one. Let's do one more and get that in the right place. Up, down, perfect. All right, so once you get done, you're going to go through that whole line of stitching as you go through. But now look at that. Isn't that just, I want to make sure you can see that on camera. Just see how fun those are, and it just adds a great bling to your front pillow top. So with this, I'm just going to, you're going to do this on the other side. You're going to have all of your rows of stitching. And again, if you want to try a different decorative stitch, that's great. These are fun techniques, right? So they're good things to learn as well. And I love that HUSQVARNA Viking has given us all of these exclusive stitches. You're not going to find them other places. So the sequin stitches, the pop-up stitches, all of those things, they're really fun, great to play around with. And once you get those finished, again, you've got your second pillow topper done. So you've got your second pillow topper done. And at this point, we're ready to go on to 2 more. So that's going to be in our next week's session, is we're going to do some embroidery applique, as well as we're going to do some what are called motif builder stitches. So we're going to have a lot more fun, 2 more pillow toppers before we put the rest all together.